All right, welcome back, everybody. Hope you had a really good lunch. We went through and updated the computer, so everything should be good, ready to rock and roll for this afternoon. Before we jump in, we have a very special guest. We have Rick Rundell from Autodesk. He's the Senior Director and Technology and Innovation Strategist there. So I want to hand it off to Rick, and he has some really cool stuff to kind of blow your mind, so this is going to be good.
Oh man, that's quite a warm-up. All right. Okay, well what I'm here to talk about is a new facility that we opened in Boston about a year ago focused on research and digital fabrication in the building industry. And I wanted to talk to you quickly about that because any and all of you would have an opportunity to do some work in that space if you were interested. So I wanted to share that with you. How many of you have visited us in Boston? Anyone? It's like, okay. All right, so a few. We moved our offices to Boston about 2 years ago, and as part of that, we opened a facility called the Build Space. Build is a clever acronym for Building, Innovation, Learning, and Design. And what that's really about is trying to understand the future of building, particularly with regard to automation and digital fabrication and robotics and topics like that in the building industry. So in manufacturing, the idea that the data from your design tool is used to directly drive the equipment that you make the item with is pretty well established. It's still pretty emerging in the building industry, though, as you guys will know. So the facility is located in Boston's Seaport Innovation District in an old Army warehouse from 1918. It's on a kind of a pier-like structure. It's not over the water, but it's on a promontory, and on either side is water. One side is a dry dock, actually, with ships coming and going. The other side is the cruise terminal, so we have apartment buildings moving in next door once in a while. It's a really cool industrial kind of hip neighborhood, and the space itself looks like this. It's 34,000 square feet on 2 floors, and the front of the space opens onto a pedestrian promenade through these wonderful storefront glass overhead doors. So everything that's going on the first floor is visible to the public, and we can open those doors and invite people in. So it's pretty exciting. On the second floor is a studio space surrounded by workshops that seats between 50 and 60 people. So what we do with this space, the way we conduct our research is instead of filling it up with a bunch of Autodesk people wearing white lab coats and thinking about the future of a building, we staff it with people like you. We make it open to partners from industry and practice, startups, and academia, and we let them use the equipment to do forward-looking work and projects in the building industry at no cost, and we then engage with those teams and kind of participate in what they're doing and create this sort of shared community, visioning community, if you will. This is a chart that shows the 70-plus organizations that have come into the space and gives you an idea of kind of how it works. The horizontal axis is time, so those are months across the top for between when we opened and now. And the bars show the duration of the residencies in the space. We're on a rolling admissions basis. The colors are yellow or startups, so you can see we got out of the gate pretty quickly with some startups we had lined up. The sort of brown colors are various forms of academic teams, research and project teams. And there may be some people from colleges and universities in here that could be engaged in that kind of project. The green, and you can see we're getting more and more of those as time goes on. The green are architecture, engineering, and construction firms that send in people. And then finally the gray are kind of neighbors and sort of interesting network of businesses that we've established a relationship with. This is what the space looks like. The lower left is an open floor. That was a case Madeline Gannon was doing some robotics work early on there. The upper right is our second floor being used for a hackathon. Down in the lower right, you see the space actually configured for an event. We just opened up the doors, secured all the equipment, not in that order, but and then we have refreshments and let the public come in for different kinds of receptions. Really fun, open, versatile space. Some of the teams that have been in the space, Perkins and Will has sent several teams from their innovation function. This particular team was doing a study on nail laminated timber, and they learned a lot about how nails instead of glue could be used to laminate timber to create this kind of shell structure you see in the upper left. They also did a study on a structural node for the River Beach project in Chicago, a timber-framed high-rise. So this was a node that would connect the cross-bracing system for the external grid shell. The EYP came in and did a generatively designed pavilion for an innovation festival in Boston, and learned something about generative design tools and process of making things real from those digital tools. Greg Porter from Hollis and Miller had a multi-month innovation sabbatical. This firm is located in the Midwest, and he had been awarded a sabbatical by his firm and needed a place, kind of an interesting place, as a home base to do that. So he moved into the build space, used that as a base for connecting with the local academic and practice and industry community, and then also did some digital fabrication work himself, and you see the result of that project there. Elkis Manfredi and Suffolk, a construction company, used the space to study the replacement of a 100-year-old facade on a historic building on the corner, a very prominent location on the corner of the public garden in Boston. So they scanned that facade and then digitally restored the detail that had been weathered away, and then used that 3D printing and CNC routing to study that detail, and ultimately those will be used to create forms for new concrete pieces that will entirely reclad that building. Ibanez Kim brought a group of students and interns in and did this project, which was a set for an opera in New York, exploring the material properties of carbon fiber, resin impregnated carbon fiber. So space has the ability to deal with pretty much any material you would find in a building, including composites like glass fiber and carbon fiber, glass, various kinds of metal, wood, stone, steel, concrete, upholstery, and fabric kind of things. And if we're not able to handle a material you're interested in, you should still talk to us about it, because we're constantly adding new equipment to the inventory. Some of the members of the community that these people from practice were engaged with were, for example, this startup, Formedwell, is doing a laser surveying system to be using on a construction site, combined with a projector that projects images back out onto the surface of the construction site to share information, to show information that's of interest to the workers there. It's a flavor of augmented reality. We have a material innovation company, Metacomb, that is using post-consumer recycled corrugated cardboard combined with resin to make both a beautiful architectural composite panel and potentially a structural panel that could be used in prefab and modular construction. Our academic teams have included several graduate students completing their work from the University of Stuttgart, and the Institute for Computational Design and Construction there. These students came over for a couple of months, and this particular project was doing robotic weaving using cable-driven robot systems. So there's a lot of people that come through the space who are doing some form of investigating how to apply automation and robotics to a construction site, something as large as a construction site. So this was one team that was examining that. Another academic team that came was Skylar Tibbetts from the self-assembly lab. He had brought over a group of students. This was a little bit of a different model. He had a studio of students who were trying to do a self-deploying structure that could be, potentially dropped from a helicopter or an airplane, and then would sort of land right side up on the ground and could be used for something, perhaps in an emergency or context or something. And you'll see here they are. This is a rather terrifying spring-loaded kind of system that they wind up and clamp, and then they drop it, and sometimes it works. Mostly it doesn't, but it's kind of interesting series of failures. They learned a lot, so it's kind of they gave me the blooper reel because I asked really nicely, because I thought that was actually a lot more interesting than the ones that were successful. Eventually they do get one to land, so spoiler alert there. From the Institute for Architecture and Advanced Architecture of Catalonia, we also have a partnership with them, and we solicited members of their alumni network or their sort of researcher network to do joint residencies between the build space and the facility in Barcelona. This is Oriol, who was doing a carbon fiber braiding. So you've probably seen metal deposition or plastic deposition systems that sort of 3D print these freeform arc-like shapes, chairs, lamps, things like that. He was trying to do the same thing with braiding carbon fiber and then curing it as the braid came out. It was a pretty interesting project, and mostly what he did is he built this amazing braider system and got it attached to the robot, and he did a couple preliminary experiments. We're hoping he'll come back next summer and continue that work. A group from Zaha Hadid's office and the Architectural Association of London came through for a couple of weeks under Shay J, who's probably not in the room, but probably at the conference, and did a couple of different investigations, including that tensile structure. Carnegie Mellon Jeremy Ficca from Carnegie Mellon brought a group of students over to do this robotically deformed metal panel system, which was also sponsored by Centria. So we have relationships with building product manufacturers and building equipment manufacturers in the industry. So then this was a group that came over from the Harvard Graduate School of Design that needed to produce an installation for the Chicago Biennial, I believe, is what that was. And it was showing the effects of socioeconomic factors and environment potentially on the morphology of the city. So that was their. That's not their description. That's my description. So if I got that wrong, if anybody knows better, you probably know more than I do. But mostly it involved interesting cuts in styrofoam with this hot wire system, robotically driven. So that's what goes on there. We take applications. We get 3 to 5 applications every week. We review them weekly. We try to get back to people within 1 or 2 weeks. Anything that has to do with the building industry has a very high probability of getting accepted. The way the program works is your organization would send you or others to Boston to work in the space for a defined period of time. We would give you space, a place to sit, training on the equipment, and training on and access to technology and Autodesk personnel, depending on what your research interest is or your project interest was. And people have been there from anywhere from 2 weeks, which is really the minimum time to get anything done. I'd recommend at least 3 or 4, all the way through. The startups are there, for a year or 2. So that's what we do. Autodesk.com, I think I have it here, Autodesk.com/build-space is the URL. You can Google Autodesk Build Space and all kinds of stuff will pop up. Feel free to contact me if you're more interested, rick.rundell@autodesk.com. And I'm going to introduce at the back of the room, just give him just 1 minute. There you go. Nathan King, who's joined my team a couple of months ago, who's also helping to develop and help formalize proposals that people might have. They might come in with an interesting idea or, in fact, no idea of what they want to do. Then we have an inventory of things that might be interesting, research projects that would be kind of interesting for Autodesk to see done in the space. So even if you don't have a great idea about what you might want to do, Nathan can help you formulate something that would be worthwhile and rewarding. And that's it.
Thank you, Rick. That was awesome. Very inspiring and very cool stuff you guys are doing there. I haven't been there yet myself, so looking forward to. All right, I'm coming. So with that, also as another transition, we're very fortunate to have Long with us today. He's going to be showing us his Dynashape package, which is very, very cool. I don't want to give away the punchline for those of you guys that have seen some of the stuff that he's been posting on Twitter and other places. It's very inspiring as well. So we're going to transition to that, and then Long's going to kind of inspire us with some more stuff, and then after that we'll transition to wrapping up the Advanced Dynamo workshop. So please welcome Long.
Hello, my name is. Right, hello guys. Very glad to be here. My name is Long. My background is in computer science, but I have a strong interest in like architecture field and especially developing tools for BIMs. I am currently a researcher at the Institute for Computational Design and Construction in University of Stuttgart, and so in my free time, I play with Dynamo and Beam, and I want to like have some contribution, my own contribution to the Dynamo Beam community. I came up with this package, DynaShape. It was actually a 6-month-old project that came out of the AAC hackathon hosted in Munich, Germany last May. So currently this is like still a very young package, like only 6 months old. So this package can help, it has a lot of applications in design. It can help you do form finding, complex form finding that based on physics, that based on like form finding principle. It can help you optimizing like your existing design. So this is one of the example done by Zach Krohn, where you can use DynaShape to post-rationalize quad panels and make them more planar. This is an example where you do physical-based form finding, where in architecture, the optimum shape of an arc that minimize on the buckling tendency can be achieved by taking a physical piece of string, you hang it, and then imagine you freeze it, and then you inverse it. You will get the kind of optimal arc. Traditionally, like traditional architects like Friotto, for example, they need a physical piece of string to do that. But now with physics simulation, you can do it in the computer, and with DynaShape, you can do it right inside the Dynamo environment. This concept can be extended to like a 2D case where you hang a piece of membrane, and then instead of getting a simple arc, you can get a pretty complex shape as well. Anyway, let me give you a live demo. So this package is open source, and you can download it from the Dynamo Beam forum. Don't download it from the package manager, because it won't work from the package manager. It requires a separate installer. So this is a simple constraint solving problem. Let's say you have a bunch of points right here, and you want to make the points lie on the same circle and maintain equal distance. DynaShape can quickly give you the solution with one click. So for example, okay, all right, thank you. So what's cool about DynaShape is that it gives you a lot of interaction. So as I move one of the points away, you see DynaShape will automatically update the geometry to keep the constraint satisfying. In this simple case, you may tell yourself, like, why do I need DynaShape? I know the solution has to be like a circular arc, right? But when you have a more complicated design goal, let's say that you want to design a roof geometry, which start flat like this. And let's say that you want each row and each column of nodes to be on to lie on the same circle and maintain equal distance. It's kind of very hard as a designer to conceive what the final roof would look like in order to satisfy all of these basic geometry constraints. With DynaShape, as soon as you like interact with one of the nodes, DynaShape will automatically move the other nodes. Yeah. Okay. And so the co-circular constraint and the equidistant constraint are still maintained interactively. And once you're happy with the design, you can actually generate real Dynamo geometry. Like this is like standard Dynamo polycurve, so that you can use it like further downstream, and then you can put in like standard Revit curtain panels to like make it a real building components, for example. All right, so that is a simple case where you form finding by simple geometric constraints.
Simple case.
In another case where, okay, I'm going to show you the catenary shell now, where you have a piece of membrane, and then you apply, you hang it under gravity, but here in computer, we kind of apply inverse gravity, so it comes up directly rather than come down. Okay, and again, you get, I can like run this super slow so you can see how the DynaShape solver do it iteration by iteration. Okay, and this can help you create like pretty interesting interior space that's optimum in the sense that it minimize the tendency to buckle. So all the force on this form, it kind of flow and cancel out each other along the surface, so it minimizes the tendency to buckle out of the surface. This is a pretty standard conventional foam fighting technique that people like Fryoto use, except that now you don't need a physical piece of membrane to do it. You can do it virtually, not only virtually, but inside your familiar dynamo environment, okay? And you can convert it to real dynamo geometry and then Revit geometry subsequently. And it's fully interactive, so you can go in and knock one of the nodes and, okay? All right, the next example, you can do tensile structure design. Okay, so this is like a little tent. Again, you can interact with that. You can dynamically change the anchor point, okay, and form file whatever you want. This whole thing is set up using a standard grasshopper, a standard dynamo graph. You can at any, you can, as a researcher, you know, we tend to use grasshopper, but I want to bring all of these techniques that we research to dynamo. That's one of my motivation behind DynaShape, because all of these techniques are kind of pretty common in our research community, especially in Europe. And I want to merge this thing with the standard like BIM industry so that we can get some complex geometry. Like we start to break away from the traditional design, but we can like get into some exciting geometry that is still within the BIM environment. Everything is interactive, so let's say that I want to change the length of this cable. It's currently at 5 unit length. I think I can like dynamically change it to, let's say, 20. So if I type in 20 here, the cable get longer. Which one? This one immediately get longer interactively. So let's make it even longer. So 50. Yeah, here you go. You can also disable this cable completely by turning off the strength, so 0. So now it will be like, so the geometry is still there, but it doesn't have any effect on the geometry anymore. Okay, so there are many goals and constraints that you can use to drive your design. I won't have time to show all of them, but these are all of the goals that are currently implemented right now. The framework is completely open source and extendable, which means that anybody can come in and implement their custom goal using C#, and it will work with DynaShape, so it can work alongside with the existing goal. So if you know a little bit of like mathematics and like just most of the case it's just simple vector math, right? And you can code up, you can implement the goals, and then you can plug it in the DynaShape solver together with other goals, and it will give you the solution that is like a compromise between all of these goals. So when you have multiple conflicting goals, it's difficult for the human designer to know which is like the solution that satisfy all of these goals or constraints, or in case where you can't satisfy all of them, which one is come closest to satisfy all of them. Okay, and this kind of algorithm that DynaShape use kind of guarantee that you will get the solution as close as possible to all of those goals, or in some cases can fully satisfy those goals, for example. All right, anyway, it's a completely open source project and completely free to use, so I hope that the BIM community gonna take advantage of that, and then I hope to see some like complex free-form geometry that is physically based and like based on like form filing principle. Okay, all right, thanks a lot. Okay. Here, like for the full event, so like feel free to come and talk to me if you want. Okay. So I really want to do a class, but you know this product came out in May, and like the deadline for like apply to do a class is kind of soon after that. And at that time, this product was not mature, so I was not confident to apply for class. But hopefully next year, I will do one. Okay. Yes.
This is really, really amazing. Can I get a selfie with you?
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
And we got another question.
Yes, please. There's a little bit hack inside. So it's, of course, it's a C# loop that runs in the background, and it's completely bypassed the standard Dynamo update. So it's do computation in the background and draw the result in the viewport directly. So I didn't even switch to the period update mode. As you see, everything run in automatic mode. So the dynamic happens behind the scenes. Yes, again, this information, so the current constraint does not give out the information, but it's easy to modify the code or like implement your own length goal that can report the current tension that applies, that's acting on two nodes, for example, and you can output those things. Oh, in this example, no, they are not. These are membrane, so they're not planar, yeah.
And for everyone here, where can we find you on Twitter, or where are some other people if they want to follow up after the event that they can follow you or reach out or?
Yes, I'm obviously on the AU mobile app, so reach me there. I'm also on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook, so on the social media. So, but I'm most active on Twitter, so please feel free to follow me and message me there. Thanks. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Long. Are you guys setting up now? Yeah. Okay, go ahead and switch over. Yeah. Okay. So I think this is a really good example of the success of Dynamo. With Dynamo, Autodesk vision was to be open source, and so it gives all of us opportunities to contribute to the greater ecosystem like Long has done. So I encourage everyone that if you've been inspired or have learned things today, you guys can also create awesome things that are also can contribute to the open source tool. So please do that. It's always great. We've done that with Beaker. Nate's doing that with Lunchbox, along with Dynashape. So there's a lot of good opportunities for all of us to kind of contribute. Design Tech's doing, what's Design Tech's Dynamo custom one? Zebra. So there's a lot of people that have been contributing. So I encourage everybody to continue that. With that, we're going to keep on going through. I have to say this next part is probably the thing I'm the most geeked out about, this animation Dynamo stuff. John was kind of sharing this with our team internally. So I think you guys will be really kind of excited for the second half of this. With that, are we ready to rock and roll? All right, cool. Thanks, guys.
All right, let's see if that's still hooked up. All right, so did everyone have a good lunch? Yeah, was it good? Is the food better this year? On the app last year, I was like, no more gray chicken for me, please. All right, so thanks everyone who just presented. That's really awesome stuff. I had a Dynashape example, and I took it out because I didn't build it, so I didn't want to get questions on it. And he showed up, so that was awesome. So I really appreciate it. So we're going to talk about some animation strategies in Dynamo. So what we need to do, if you don't have the sample model open that we provided, open that up. Most of the computers do because we fixed that during lunch. So we ran around to each computer and reinstalled 9 packages times 46. So we got that done for you guys. And we're doing pretty good on time, but we'll kind of play it by ear as well. Because we do want to get into some of the Dynamo Studio stuff. Who all opened Dynamo Studio earlier by accident when we said open Revit and Dynamo? Did anyone? I've done that myself. You open it and you're like, where's the Revit tab? So we'll get into Dynamo Studio in a little while. All right, so what we're going to do is close PowerPoint. And we should be in this model called samplemodel.rvt. Do I have one built into these slides? So what we're going to do is, who all builds families for their firms in here? Raise your hands. Quite a few people build families. How many people use families? No, I'm just kidding. Everyone should, right? What we're going to do is, when I build families, I like to include, and that's an animation, I like to include a little GIF or GIF, whichever side of the fence you're on. I say GIF and people hate it, so I keep saying it. I like to create those little thumbnails for people to show them what the family's doing. And creating those, there's a few different ways. You can do it manually. You can buy an add-in, like I said before, or you can do it in Dynamo. There's a package out there called Dynanimator from the Bad Monkeys, and Havard was in here earlier, which is a really awesome package that kind of inspired me to build some workflows that we're going to use as well. That package is good too, so download that and check it out. And yes, PowerPoint actually cooperated. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to animate a door parameter. This is for a class I'm teaching later on in the week as well. So we're going to animate some doors. So in this Revit model, what we're going to do is we're going to kind of get a view like this. We might just isolate one door, actually. So we'll click on that door on that facade with the little cross on it, and let's use this little section box tool. So we'll click that. And the section box is hidden. That's fun. Maybe we won't just, we'll just animate the darn door. So we'll deselect section box. So what we're going to do is if we select this door, we place those in the model, we can see a parameter on that door called 3D swing angle. If you don't see that, you have the out-of-the-box sample model open, and you've got to open the other one. So raise your hand if that's happening, and we'll get to you as well. So if we change that parameter, so 90, my door opens. Yay, open doors, that's fun. That's a parameter that I added to that family. And this data set you guys are getting as well, so you can have that door. That's Evolve Labs' gift to you. So what we could do is we could start to work with these parameters in Dynamo in really cool ways. So what we'll do is, a little pre-flight here. Let's go to a folder or our desktop and create a folder called Images. And I should already have one. So desktop, right-click, new folder, Images. Everyone make that folder for me. You can put it in documents too if you really want it, I guess. Desktop's just a little easier. I don't want to get too ambitious with the machines too. So get a folder called Images. Once you get that, let's click in the address bar and copy that address and store it in our clipboard for later use. So do that for me. And then we'll go back into Revit. I'll change this door back to 0 for 3D swing angle, because that's kind of the punchline right there, and it's already done. And then we'll launch Dynamo. And once Dynamo thinks for a bit, we'll get that open, and we'll start working with some animation on these parameters. All right, and then we'll just do new for a new blank workspace, and I'll leave Dynamo minimized for a second so I can select that door a little easier. So what we'll do is we'll right-click and search for a select model elements, singular. You could do plural and do several, but we'll just do singular for now. Click select and select that door. And then we'll hover until we get the little pin. That way we have one door selected. Don't select the wall, because the wall doesn't have a parameter called 3D swing angle, obviously. So we'd get an error, which isn't a big deal. So we have that door selected, and now we can maximize the graph. So there's a few ways of doing this. I mentioned Dynanimator had it. This workflow I'm about to show was inspired by that, so I want to give a whole bunch of credit to that package. It hasn't been updated, I think, since they created it at AU 14, so that's kind of why we're not using that one right now. We need to submit some code to that. So everyone, hopefully, should have a bin called Rhythm. If you do not, raise your hand, and we'll try to get to you. I think we touched every computer, I hope. So within Rhythm, that's my custom package that I've made and I publish for everyone to have. If you go to Rhythm and Animate, we have a few different options in there. So these nodes have a little Dynamo logo next to them. That means they're a C# library. So those are all built for you to use. Specifically, what are we working with? What are we about to animate? Anybody? The opening door parameter. That's a numeric parameter. So what do you think we're going to use? Animate numeric parameter, right? Yeah. I like to kind of go through the steps. So we haven't really seen a whole lot of nodes with a bunch of inputs like this quite yet. So now we have one. We're expecting an element to animate, a parameter named to animate. Where do I start? Where do I end? How many frames do I want? So do I want it to be a really smooth animation or kind of choppy? A directory path will be that path that we copied and should have stored on our clipboard. And the view is the view to use. So let's start building some of this out. What we'll do is we'll double click for a code block. Quickest way to start typing some text. Very quick. What we'll do is quote Our parameter name is 3D swing angle, I think. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, please. And it's case sensitive, so that's kind of how it works. I could have built it case insensitive since it is my node, but I didn't. Note to self. Shame on me. So I'll make Dynamo full screen. So we have 3D swing angle. We're going to start at 0 degrees open and get to 90 degrees. So what we need to do is type 0, semicolon, 90. Quick trick in Dynamo. Who showed me this? Ian Siegel showed me this in a presentation, and I was blown away. You can just keep going with semicolons, and when you click out, they all go and stack for you. So you don't have to enter every time. Less keystrokes, more efficiency. That's what's really good. So now that's stacked for me. Pretty cool. We can also click next to it, and we'll do something small, like 10 iterations. If you put 5,000, it'd try, but you'd be waiting for a bit probably, and then the frame guys might panic. No, I'm just kidding. So now we have some inputs fulfilled. So now we can start connecting these things. So start value would be 0, end value is 90. I want to export 10 frames, and now I need a directory path. So what we're going to do is, I kind of mentioned I'm lazy quite a bit. So we're actually going to search for a string node. And we'll dissect why I'm using a string instead of a code block a little bit. From here, we can copy or paste that value that we saved and add another backslash to the end, or else it'll just throw all the images on your desktop. I need to build more into it for that too. So that's our path that we're going to use. The reason I'm using a string and not a code block, which you don't have to do this part, but if I were to paste that in with quotes around it, so I'll do quote, quote, it's going to freak out. Does anybody know why that's an error on the code block node? I have to escape the backslash. That's a programming thing. So it takes a little bit longer if I use a code block to come in and add another one, which I said you guys don't have to do this. I just wanted to break that down a bit. So you have to do what's called escape. You have to escape the other backslash so that way it knows what to do with it. String's just a little bit faster. So we'll use the string. Next, we have to give it a view to use. So if we just grab Dynamo like that and snap it to the left and just click in the workspace, we can zoom and we can see that we have this view. We could crop this view down some too. Bad Revit trick, EH. Let's hide that typography. Don't tell anyone that I did EH. And we have that door selected. So what we're going to do is we can use active view. So if you search for active view, there should be one called springs.doc.activeView. I really like Spring Nodes Active View because it's just faster. Otherwise, you could do it with out-of-the-box nodes, but you need 2 nodes for it. So if you don't have the Springs one, I could break down the 2. So does anyone not have the Springs node? Man, this is working out. Amazing what refreshing 46 computers will do, right? So now if we hover and pin, we can see that I have an axon, and I'm going to clean these up a little. We have an axon selected, and that's the view I want to use. So we need to give it an element, and then, if you guys want to go ahead and do it, tie in the view. So now, Dynamo, we can watch it actually. Dynamo's animating that little door, you could see it, and it's showing us this, telling us it's time to wait. See that little door opening? Isn't that fun? You're able to animate a parameter that you created? Question. I want to build it for Inkscape. I can't access their API. I was looking at it because I want to do like the export screenshot. It'd be so awesome. In the, what is it called? The exhibit hall. On Wednesday, I'm showing Dynamo to Revit to Inkscape live with like a Stranger Things light bulb wall. So if you want to stop by and check that out too. So once that's done, go to your images folder on your desktop, which I should have open, and you guys should see this. Do you all see that? And if you hold Control and roll your mouse wheel, another tip, I'm able to zoom in. And we'll double click. It's really small because I didn't crop this view down very well, but that door is moving. I'm not going to spend a lot of time helping you guys set up a Revit view. Everyone should know how to set up a Revit view. And now we have frames to use. So one of the things I really like to do with this is you can go to something called GIF Maker, gifmaker.me, or GIF Maker. I'll use both. You can upload images, and I'll go to that images folder. And you guys don't necessarily have to do this part, but you can follow along. And upload each one of those frames to this site. Reminder, there is an add-in on the App Store that does this for a little bit of money, but you can do it in Dynamo for free, which is fun. So now we kind of have this going. I could pick what the speed is. And we can't really see it that great because it is kind of that zoomed out view. And then you could create an animation from it. From there, you could download it, and it'll save. Once you click it, you can kind of see my little door moving pretty slow. But that's that animation method that you could start to string together these frames really quickly. Is that something that you could use at your firm, maybe? I know that we used it a lot. I imagine you could, the question was, can you make it upload the images and string them all together in the cloud service? I imagine you could. There's some pretty cool stuff for send-to-web stuff from Radu Gidi, I think his name is. He does some really cool web interaction.
How can you re-render it if you're not happy?
So if you were to, yeah, that's a great question. So what I did, does anyone know what an infinite loop is? It's an infinite circles going around forever. So what I actually built into this node is a little protection for that. So if we minimize Dynamo, and I look at my door, what does the comment say? Already animated, clear this to run again. So just clear that comment, and you could re-export it. I built that in because I love angry emails and all, but yeah, I don't want your computer just to be going, circling, and the door just keeps opening. It's kind of funny. It happened to me a lot. I was like, oh, that sucks. Control, delete. But yeah, so you're able to make those animations to really advertise your content. Because not only as an advanced Dynamo user, as an advanced Revit user, which you all are if you're using Dynamo, if you're making content, it's kind of like annotating your code. You need to kind of let people know what's going on with it. And I think that's something, another takeaway. Was there another question I saw earlier? You could use it for phasing. You definitely can. Dynanimator has stuff built in there in their package that does it. There's a website for them. If I just search Dynanimator, we could probably find it real quick, which you guys don't have to do this once again. Animator. I actually think it was showing up. There's a GitHub page, and they have a lot of examples for it, which is pretty awesome. So like if we go to phases, and hopefully it plays. Does it play? Yeah. They're animating phases on the sample model with their package. The logic's the same, to where you pick elements and all that. So yeah, you can do a lot of that cool animation stuff as well. This animation, like, this isn't like pushing data around in Dynamo, but it's really cool stuff that's useful. So I just kind of wanted to share that with all you guys. We got the packages working, so like, I didn't do that on my own. Like, I pretend like I'm like super awesome, but I had help from Vanessa, Patrick, all of our team. So everyone, like, give them a round of applause too, because we installed a lot of packages, which is crazy. So we got that all set up. But yeah, you can check out Dynanimator. It has quite a bit of documentation as well. Displace views, that's on their to-do list. They have like, if you go to this wiki on the GitHub, there's like a whole to-do list in here somewhere. And they even tell you how to make your own as well. So you can get in there and actually start to bundle together your own workflows. So like, let's say you wanted to jump from sheet to sheet and make like a flip book on your sheets. You can actually activate a view, export, that'd be cool. That's an idea I just got, so that's pretty neat. But yeah, they have a lot of nodes, and they're always adding some. This is an open source project, so kind of like how Long touched on that a little bit. If you really get into it, you can submit code and help out as well, which is really awesome. Because now it's really users helping users, you know? All right, so what we're going to do is, everyone should still have this Dynamo window open. We're going to go ahead and clear these images on the images folder. And we're going to jump right into animating something else. So let me get that one kind of going. And I'm trying to make sure I'm good on time too. Should have really printed this schedule. So we got till 2 on this one. So that's 15 minutes. So we'll probably do materials, I think, yeah. All right, so what we're going to do next is we're going to do a little bit more of a manual animation. So like has anyone in here ever had to do material studies, like on a facade? So like you have like a facade that has different random colors and you need to alternate them. Doing those manually, like going in and selecting each curtain panel, you're able to do this. Like if I came in, tab, select till I get that thing, which I'm not getting it. Select face maybe, escape. I could grab the panel, unpin the darn thing, go down to random 1, which I have programmed in, and now I have a random panel. How many more do I need to do? Nah, I'm not doing that. So we're going to learn how to animate those. So I'm going to actually toggle back. So let's go ahead and fire up Dynamo and just get rid of these nodes. You can save them if you want, but that is also in the end graph for everyone. So what we'll do is the first thing we need to do is we need to work with curtain wall because we want to generate several design options and export a frame for each one for like a project architect to review. So we want to use another select model element. It's kind of the easy one to use. And once again, you guys have any questions while we're working through this, let's tackle them and work through it. So select model element, click select, and you could use either one of these two curtain walls. I'm going to use this one. And make sure you select the curtain wall, not like a mullion or something. So if you hover and pin, it should say wall. That's what we're looking for. Right now, everything else is pretty much going to be in Dynamo for now. So we'll go ahead and maximize Dynamo. All right. I might sit down for this part. So a curtain wall has several things inside of it. Those are panels. So luckily, the Dynamo team, if I expand my library, will search for this one. Under Revit, Elements, Curtain Panel, we have this very awesome, amazing node called Curtain Panel by Element. So the Dynamo team was nice enough to give us this Curtain Panel by Element node. So what this needs is something that hosts those curtain panels. So a curtain wall hosts them. It holds all of them for us. So we can plug those in, hover, and pin. So in 2 nodes, I obtain curtain panels. That's a lot faster than me tab selecting each one, right? That's kind of what we want to start to think is how to do this stuff faster. So now we have our curtain panels. One thing with Revit, it gets a little, I won't get too off track on it, but with Revit, there's things like, so that curtain panel right now, it's known as an element. It's not known as a family, even though it's kind of a family. So what we need to do to work with parameters on it, like material or things like that, I need to convert this to what's called a family instance. Families in Revit, there's instances that are placed. That node is right here as family instance. So the Dynamo team gave us that one too. I think they know that people like random stuff, I guess, right? So what we'll do is we'll look for as family instance, and we'll drag that up. So once again, input and output kind of match. If I hover and pin, we now see what the family type of that curtain panel is. It's glazed. Curtain panel is the overarching element, and the family instance is the glazed condition. Does that make sense? Like if anyone has questions, let me know, and we'll break that down some. All right, so what we need to do now is get off the wrong example on my cheat sheet. So we have our family instance. The next thing that we need to do is, you guys don't have to minimize Dynamo. I showed it a little bit earlier, but if I tab select a panel, unpin it. In this project, we built in some randoms for you guys already. So we built curtain panels. I just did edit type duplicate. So they're already loaded up for you to use. We actually need to grab those now to work in Dynamo. So we're going to hit undo. Oh, you're not going to do this. I'm going to undo what I just did to show you. And we need to collect those unused curtain panels. So the way to do that is when something's in Revit as a family, it's known as a family symbol. So that's not super intuitive, but once you kind of get it, it's right there. I think the Revit kit actually has a cheat sheet that he just released that explains that a bit more too. Print it out and have it on your screen or something like that. So a family symbol in Revit is an element type. So we'll look for element space type. And it'll be this first node that says element types. This is a drop-down node for us. So I could click that little arrow and look for family symbol, which is right there. We want family symbol and not family instance because these aren't placed quite yet. So now I have family symbol selected. Dynamo doesn't know what to do with this yet, so we need to tell it select all of them. So the way we do that is all elements of type. And this node's kind of hard to find, so just search through the list till you find it, or type the whole word and it's bound to show up. So now we have all elements of type. And then these could plug in together. So that's a whole lot of family symbols, 324. That's reporting every family loaded into my project, which is a lot. Seems like everyone's, I guess the food was good. Everyone's a little relaxed now. So what we need to do is I need to obtain the ones that have random as a prefix, right? So the way to do this, and someone made a joke once that my favorite John's favorite node in Dynamo is filter by Boolean mask. So we're going to break that down a little. So what we can use is the name, because I named them very specifically. So we'll do element dot name. So we're doing an action to an element item. These are elements, so we can plug those in. And now if we hover and pin, we can see all of the names. And if I eventually scroll through, I can see random probably. But I'm not about to scroll through 324 elements. So now what we could do is compare that to what we want. So this is a string. We talked about data types earlier. So if we were to go to core, string, which it'll think, we can look at all the stuff that we can do to strings in Dynamo. So specifically, what did I say earlier? My families start with the name !random. So string starts with something. So that kind of makes some sense. So now string starts with is a node that we placed. And you could search for it too with a right click if you want. So this takes a string. It takes something I'm looking for. In my case, I'm looking for !random. And I typed it the correct case, but you can ignore case. So like if I were to come in here and really jack this up some, let's see. No one types that way. We could do true. Some people type that way with that SpongeBob thing. No one gets that one? Darn. And we could tell it to go ahead and ignore the case. So now we have a list of false. And did I put an ! on the front or did I not? Darn. Let's see. So I got to select my panel again. If it's not in the list, I won't find it. I didn't put an ! Darn, that's why we can't find it. So take off that ! A lot of times I do to force it to the top of the list, but I guess I forgot that. So we should see some true in here somewhere, which I'm going to get nervous if I don't. Oh, thank God. Oof. And I added those last, so they are at the bottom. So what we could do is this output right here is called a Boolean mask. It's because it's a list of Booleans, which are true or false, and they're all on a list which can mask something and show other stuff as well. So this node I actually learned by going on the Dynamo forums right after I learned Dynamo, because I was like, man, I keep selecting everything and changing it. How do I fix that? And someone's all filtered by bool mask, and I was like, what the hell is a bool mask? And once I got it, I got it. So right click and search for filter, and it'll be the first node that pops up, filter by bool mask. So this is our mask, and this is our list, or is it? Is that the right one? No. Okay, well, I'm hearing no is good. So the way a Boolean mask works is you can filter any of this data upstream, and I'll minimize my library, by that mask. So I plug element into list, and this is my mask. I'm not going to hover and pin because it'll show me both. So what I'll just do is drop a watch node by right-click watch. And now, and we'll try to get all this on one screen for you guys, so that way you can see what we're doing. Now I can see that I have 5 family types selected that start with random because I filtered them out. If I were to look at the out, that's everything else. Filter by Bull Mask is your friend. Use it, love it, and have fun. Like, it's a great node. So now we have those families that we want to work with. A little extra bonus that I forgot to cover in the Dynamo player portion is a watch node. So that's a watch node. I don't use them a whole lot. But that watch node will actually give you outputs in Dynamo player. So if you're running a workflow like the view templates one, you can put a watch node and it'll tell you what changed. So you can start to do counts. It also works for Fractal, which we'll get into. So I left that out. You rename it by just double-clicking it like we did in the Dynamo player portion. That question came up on a break, and I wanted to answer it. All right, so now we have our family types that we want to use. And we have the ones that we want to set and modify. So what we need to do is I only have 5 available, so I need to get a whole lot of them. The way that I do it, which is probably the lazy way, of course, is I don't want to count and figure out how many I need. Dynamo is really good at counting, so if I right-click and search for count and plug this family instance, so my wall that's going to change into count, I can get 60 right away. And I can use that as data now. So I'm letting Dynamo do the talking. That makes this workflow reusable as well, which is pretty awesome. So what we need to do is create at least 60 of those panel types. So one of the easiest ways to do this is search for a list action, which is list.cycle. And we can put our source list into it and then the count. So all this is doing now is it's going through and generating a bunch of panel types for me to use. So now I have a whole bunch. This isn't doing anything to Revit, like copying them or anything. It's just giving me data to shuffle around and move around. So does that kind of make sense? So we have a whole bunch. What we're going to do is we're also going to shuffle that up and make it random and have some fun with it. All right, so what we need to do is we need to randomize the order of this list. One of the best packages for randomization workflows is called Lunchbox. It's from Nate Miller, formerly of Case, but of Proving Ground. So if we look at Lunchbox, it has a lot of good stuff. In our case, I'm just going to search for random, because I don't want to try to find it down in there. And we can see a node called Randomize Order. So let's click that node. And I'll leave it right there for a minute until everyone gets that plopped down. So Randomize Order. And I'm going to go ahead and unpin this because we kind of saw that that made a whole list. So now this takes data to randomize, and it takes something called a seed. Does anyone know what a seed is for plants? One more time? Different generations of the random. That's true. So that's a great answer. So what the seed is it lets us recall design options. So what good's a design option if like I close the Revit file and I can't pull it up again? Not very good. So what we could do is feed that an integer, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, depending on how many options we want. So let's go ahead and right-click, and Mark showed this node earlier, integer slider. So we're going to use integer slider, the out-of-the-box one, not the one with the metronome. Integer slider. If we click this little arrow, we could go ahead and change how many options. So we'll do like 10 options. We don't need 100 for this. So we'll just click that arrow and type in 10 as our maximum. And I'll just leave it open so people could still see it. So if I were to, we'll leave it on 0 for now. It went to 1. If I were to plug that into seed, I can now see this shuffled up pretty well. That's easy to see when I look at 4, 2, 1, 5, blah, blah, blah. If I change that seed, that should keep changing. So what will happen is since Dynamo's on run automatic, if I keep sliding it, I get a new design option each time. That's awesome. That's faster than me at doing that too, I'll tell you that much. So now we have an option, but we still have 600 panels. That's not fun. I need 60. So another node that's really awesome in Dynamo is called take items, because you're telling Dynamo, I need this many, grab it for me. So take items. And this graph's going to get a little bit bigger, so I'm going to pan to the right a little, guys. And we'll plug randomized stuff into list, and the amount I need is this count back here. Great thing in Dynamo is keep on reusing nodes. That way you're just more efficient, especially when you're deploying workflows to your firm. So now if I hover, I have 60 family types chosen. Awesome. I'm going to clean up a little bit. And now, what would you do if you're doing it manually? You'd select the curtain panel, unpin it, in my case, which I was having to do. Go to the type selector and select a new type. So you're selecting a new family type to use in place. So if we break that down in that thought, we can do a similar thing in Dynamo. So I need to set the type. Good thing in Dynamo is I don't have to unpin it. That's even better. So I don't even have to deal with that. So there's no node out of the box that'll do set type, but we installed a package called Clockwork on all of your stations as well, which is a magnificent package. So always use that. The Clockwork one, he might have taken it out. We're going to use this first one that shows up. I'm sorry. I take that back. So familyInstance.setType is from a package called Wombat from Brian and Andrew from Woods Bagot formerly. They just switched on us. So now what this takes is an instance and a type. Real quick, let's switch this to manual run mode. I kind of touched on endless loops earlier, and I don't want to do that to everyone right now. So on the bottom left corner, let's switch that to manual. So right now we're looking for instances of families that are in our model. Those are right here where it says family instance, right up here that we can reuse. The new family type will be on this take items. So if I plug that into family type, that's now fulfilled. If we really want to have fun, let's go ahead and drag this over to the left and leave this view visible and hit run. Did everyone hit run and see this? Do I see a lot of blue and gray stuff on screens? I hope. If you didn't get it, raise your hand. You guys need it? You need to install Wombat from the package manager probably. Yeah. So now we have an option generated for a facade. That's really awesome. Is that something that you've ever been asked to do and you've had to do it manually or go to SketchUp for whatever reason, you know? Yeah. Guys, go ahead and keep on changing the integer slider and hitting run for me. So now, I'll just hit F5 for run if you want. And we have a new option every time. What's really cool is option 0 looks like that. I switch options, go back to option 0, and it's going to be the same option that I had earlier. So now I have something that's recallable, and you could sit there with like a project manager or project architect and say, do you like this one? Do you like this one? Do as much as you want. And now you're saving time for your firm, you're saving money, and you look really cool doing it, right? That's always awesome. Yes, so you can keep on adding options to it as well. Another thing that I don't think we'll show it is we can actually set up an image export like we did earlier and export an image each time because I can't really email a Revit file to some project managers, right? Question? Yeah, this will work in Dynamo Player as well. So what we need to do, I like that question. That's a great question. So let's expand Dynamo and right-click on this element types and deselect is input. I don't want people changing what the element type is because then they'll change it to walls and mess everything up, right? So is input will deselect. Select model element will leave the same, and integer slider we want to use. And now we could save this, and I'll save it on my desktop. Name it Dynamo Player _ randomize. And then we'll close Dynamo out. So once you've saved it on your desktop, and open Dynamo Player. That is a great question. And it's going to have that wall selected by default, so I don't have to mess with selection, which is good. And it's right there. So does everyone see the one they just saved? Yes? No? No? Everyone's quiet. Does anyone not see the one they just saved on their desktop? You're good? Okay. So what we could do is we can go ahead and hit this input if we wanted to switch the wall, which I invite you guys to switch the wall too. Or you can just hit play and generate new options. So hit the little control if you're in 2018.2, and now we can pick an option, hit play, hit play, hit play. Even better, hit select model element. It's going to be kind of hard, but pick another curtain wall and hit play. Now I built a workflow that's reusable, deployable, and does really cool stuff. Question? Yeah. Yeah, so the question was, can I specify, like give weight to one, give weight to a panel color? The short answer is definitely. We'd have to build that logic in with some percentage sliders. But you could say, give me 50% of random 3, and then it'd work. It's doable. We won't build all the logic right now, but it's very doable. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, so then you could start to say how much glazing, what percentage of glazing needs to be on it still, or something like that. Really fun is I built walls like this with thousands of panels, and I hit run, and I'm like, yeah, and my computer's just going for it. I'm like, take that. No, I'm just kidding. So yeah, that's something, this isn't just for facades. This is a facade example, but you could really explore a lot of things. I've actually seen, people do it with like family libraries. So they have like a whole library of all the families that they use, and they just keep setting types. That way people can see all the wall types in their project or something like that as well. Let me take a quick peek at the schedule, and then we'll kind of see. You guys save that one, take it back to work, and wow everyone for sure. It's like, what did you learn at AU? I did this cool facade thing. So I think we're kind of running a little bit low on time. What I'm going to do is we need to get into Dynamo Studio. So we'll go ahead and open that first of all. But I want to show one more example. Just like, I'll just show it. We're not going to build it all out. But I want you to see it because it's fun. So what I'm going to do is there is in your folder, I think it's that one. Everyone close your eyes. You're looking at all my secret files. Dynamo Workshop, dataset, animation strategies. So the last one, which was in my recent files, is a Dynamo Studio specific workflow that does something just kind of fun. I just wanted to make something fun. Dynamo Studio is its own software outside of Revit that lets you do all kinds of sorts of cool stuff. You can model all kinds of geometries, start connecting it to other things. But I like it too because Dynamo Studio crashes. It doesn't take Revit with it like Dynamo does, right? So what we could do is this has a node in it called Fader, one way. It's not super intuitive, but it's awesome. This is from a package called Firefly, which is actually on all of your computers. So if you're on the break and want to mess with it, go for it. But what it allows us to do is something called a periodic run in Dynamo, which means run, run, run. So it keeps on doing that for us. So if I click periodic, this thing is outputting parameter values for me, iterating through them, and animating this cool bar graph in the back. So I've used this for some of those family animations to where I just give it a start parameter, end parameter, and I just hit run. So in Revit, it's a little scarier to do because Revit's Revit sometimes. But yeah, we're able to start to create these really cool animations. This one was an example just because, but that's in the data set as well. So you're not limited to using rhythm for animation or using manual stuff. You're able to do things like this where it'll just constantly keep running, and the logic's not incredibly complicated, for sure. One more thing that I wanted to show is color picker. In Dynamo, by default, if I look for color, we can define a color by alpha, red, green, blue. That's not fun. So do yourself a favor on your personal computers. Go to packages, search for a package, and install something called UI++. It gives us that color picker. That way I don't even have to mess with all that, which is awesome. UI++, get it, use it, and it gives us this really cool interface that's not in Dynamo out of the box until 2.0, I think. And Zach just walked in. Yeah, it'll be in 2.0, but for now, use it all from the package manager. So I hope that kind of like gives you guys some ideas of some of the stuff that's still very useful but fun in Dynamo to be able to distribute stuff to your firm. especially the randomization stuff. That question comes up quite a bit on the forums where someone's like, random workflows, that's what we want to do. So yeah, thank you guys, and we're going to go ahead and get Mark up here for some cool fractal stuff. If there's any questions while we're getting transitioned, just raise your hand too, and we'll get it. Question? UI++. Yeah. Yeah, so randomizing other family types, I've seen people do trees. So they have trees like on the topography, and they set the type. I've seen people do, I've seen a lot of different stuff. They have vehicle placement. And then like if you have Inkscape running, like we said a couple times, you see it changing. Pretty fun. Randomizing. Yeah, so I've actually seen for wall types, that one's not random. But what we're doing is we have all of our wall types selected. Just a list of them, and then we go doom, doom, and then we keep seeing them different condition. So you're able to start to build these libraries that like are like equipment books that show all the stuff in your template too. You can stop this thing. So yeah. Yeah, if there's any ideas like that, just like get with us at the break and everything too, and we'll kind of work through them for sure. All right, so thanks, guys. That's kind of the last little bit I had. Just kind of get with me. I'll be here all week. Yeah, everyone for Mark too. Here you go.
This is for you, dude. Good applause. Okay, guys. So hopefully you enjoyed some animation strategies. That thing is like endless. You know, like a lot of those nodes too. John just built. So if you guys just dig into that stuff, and I'm sure he's more than welcome to help, you guys can start building your own animations for things that don't exist. It's kind of like a framework almost, and you can start adding stuff to build cool stuff. So as the next topic, we're going to go into a pretty abstract overview of optioneering. And we're going to go ahead and do did you guys like this double beard? I liked it. Okay. We're going to go into some Dynamo Studio and Fractal, because that's something that's, this is on the cusp of it all, right? Like Fractal is I think still an alpha. So if you guys want to be on the edge of what's going on and what the Dynamo team is developing, and even Autodesk in general, we'll start to use some Fractal. So we'll go over sending some different graphs up there. And the way that we're going to start is we're going to go here into the next data set, which is 06 iterative design with Fractal. And we could go ahead and open the first one.
Yes.
You are, definitely. Yeah, that'll be the best way to do it, definitely. Yeah, so just close out of Revit, Dynamo, all of that stuff, and fire up Dynamo Studio. I guess mine was already running, so I didn't think about it.
Does anyone have any deprecated nodes on the screen right now?
Just so you're asking if anyone has deprecated nodes?
Yeah, because we over lunch hour we spun through it and download all those packages.
Okay. Okay, so as starting overview of Fractal and Dynamo Studio in particular, the relationship between the two, you can only use out-of-the-box nodes for this. Same, you can't use Python nodes either. There's just some web, things that they're going through where running scripts online that are tied to your computer can be pretty tough for security reasons. And so you shouldn't have any deprecated nodes or anything like that because we're not using any custom nodes. So if we just look at this graph on a high level, we can run it first, and we just see that there's just some sort of building kind of tower. And for this one, we're probably not going to script a whole lot of nodes, we're not. And so I could just kind of narrate what's going on here. So we just set some level elevations, and then we can just like loft some solids, so we can just like make like the skin of this building essentially. We add some adaptability to like the level layout, so like we can make like bigger levels or smaller levels, things like that. And then we have on the bottom like a site rectangle. So like in case you want to develop like some sort of site plan, you can do things that are like a little more complex than just the square that we have, which is like this square right here. And then at the end, you know, we just kind of loft everything together and create like some rectangles. And if you want to like, so then up here we can see this is just like one of our input nodes. So just for level 1 and just for level 2, we're going to go ahead and be able to like stretch those. Because a lot of times when you want to like do a lot of stuff with points, you have to do a lot of duplication. Kind of like when he zoomed out on Dynashapes and we were all just like, whoa, like that happens a lot. So I didn't want to like freak you guys out. So we just did it for 2 levels, but it could be abstracted out to like a little bit more. Does anyone have any questions about that before we like send it up? Okay, cool. So when we want to send to web, we can just go ahead and just do file send to web. And you hope that it works, right? Okay.
You know I already know how to do this stuff.
What happened there, man?
Network kind of. Something with the network.
Oh my gosh.
Send to web. Kaboom. Disconnected? Is the Wi-Fi down? Is that what you said? Internet's down?
It looks like you don't have any internet connection on my side. Okay, here we go, guys. Can you check this out? Like, so when you're on this screen, you can actually make this little dinosaur start jumping over like some cactuses. I don't know if you could beat my high score, but if you see the dinosaur, just start jumping with the spacebar, and you'll be going for it. I'm actually like really good at this game. So like after, yeah, like no, I'm not even joking either. Like, I have like 3 kids too, and like when they're playing this game, like they have so much fun with it. So like toddlers, things like that. I should have focused, right? I was talking too much. Like pretty soon, like the colors will inverse, so like it'll turn to night. So you can start jumping over like different things like during the nighttime and stuff like that too. Yeah. Oh, cool! Look, it looked like I got internet connection.
Yeah. Did you do send to web already?
Cool. Look, I guess it took John to click it. Okay, great. So we can say like, you know.
Did everyone else come back up?
So we specifically asked Zach about this. We were a little concerned about all this publishing to the web and seeing how this was going to work.
From my camera.
It's a pretty cool example, though. If we really want to show it. And just curious, like, has anyone used Fractal yet? Yes. Sweet. What are you guys thinking of it while this is going to
It might be safe because it published on mine. Because you're logged into mine.
Well, I have all of mine like already sent up.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so I could just bring those up.
That's my
Right here. Okay, cool. So like I already sent mine to web earlier, but if you send them to web on yours, if you're able to do that, then you can just type in like a description and a name, and then you can go ahead and do it. So like one thing like I'll kind of unpack a bit is like if you click visit, it doesn't send it to Fractal, but you can use it on the Dynamo customizer. So I don't know if you guys seen the Dynamo customizer, but it's a cool little workspace in Dynamo that you can just share with people, and then they can also like use your graph and like preview the geometry based on the inputs that you've given and things like that, and it's pretty cool. So if you click visit, that'll send you over there. Otherwise, you have to sign into Fractal, and I think, yeah, and so I think with Fractal right now, you kind of get access to it. So you go and you sign into Fractal, and then someone from the Autodesk team will like, you know, provide your account with access to Fractal. Yeah. Kind of rough, right? Yeah. Okay, cool. So like, as you can see, these things like already generated, so we can go ahead and clear them. And then so like we'll preview this user interface really quick and see what we get. So here, we're always going to have like parallel coordinates charts. And parallel coordinates charts are just, these charts that give you the ability to easily visualize highly dimensional data. And they're one of the only charts that can do that. And so it's a really good, thing that Autodesk picked that chart. You can sort it by, different things that it was able to do, and then you can give it like certain inputs, and you can pick how many of those things that you want. And you can do like cross product. You can do some lacing stuff. But you guys are just, you guys know lacing super well already. So if one thing you have to remember with Fractal that Bill Allen told me was that you should be very, very minimal. Because like right away, like even with that, with 5 and 5, like you're going to generate what, like 25 designs. So if you have like 4 different inputs and you want to develop like 10 on each of those, it's going to scale like exponentially. So whatever you do, like when you're making things with Fractal, you do it very, very minimally. And it's kind of like an art in that respect.
Mark, did you show them like the is input?
Not yet, I haven't. So like if I'm going to come back here and I'll unpack like a bit, what we can see here is that whatever we name these, so this is going to be like the level that we can slide and we can change like level 1. If I do this, like we can see in the background like this preview of the geometry kind of changing. And then same with this one. And these are the two like main keys. So kind of like what John mentioned about the is input when you're using Dynamo Player. Is the same thing here with Fractal. So we can see back here that we do have like, say this slider for like number of levels, but we've unchecked is input because we want our building just to be static, at least for this level visualization that we're trying to kind of flex and move around. So same with these integer sliders for like levels that we're not trying to flex, we have like is input unchecked. Same with the site rectangle. So we go ahead and do that. Whatever we name this node is going to be what shows up when we go into Fractal. So that's going to end out being up here on this top of the parallel coordinate axis is going to be the name that you named the slider or the input node that you had. And there's some other quirks as well, like if you use like code blocks and things like that that you guys can kind of dig into. So we could go ahead and click generate, and it'll do its thing. And we'll like, hope that, in somewhere that there's actually pictures showing up, and we can go ahead and check those out, right? So like, yeah, it's been a presentation riddled with crazy stuff. So this is just another one of those. So then, like, another cool aspect of like parallel coordinates charts is that you can start to, it's called brushing. So you can start brushing onto these axes and start to like visualize like what specific ranges of data that you really like. And so it's something where like you can start to find optimizations based off of general like abstract ideas that you might have and things like that, and try to just like correlate data and try to find something out. Usually like if you click on one of the images, then it's going to go ahead and highlight that for you. So you can kind of like hone in on like what exactly all the attributes are of like the image that you brought up. Okay, so the next kind of file that we're looking at now is like, we'll just go ahead and go back, and you could just open the next 5-level building file. Did anyone like send this to web for the Dynamo Customizer? Right, exactly. Cool, great. Question in the back? Nothing anymore? Okay. Cool. So like I could just go over here to the next Dynamo graph that's kind of outlining like a Dynamo Studio possibility. And so the last graph ended with the 2 nodes that were just lofting things together. And so what we went ahead and did here is we just are going to calculate and show the areas of the first 2 levels. And to do that, we just just pretty much like made the surface out of the things, out of like the 2 levels, and then we just measured those areas. So that's kind of what we're doing here, is we're just measuring these areas, and we use like a little list too. And you guys can kind of dig into what the output of this is going to be. So what we want to dig into about this graph is that if we use watch nodes, then we're able to see the output of these nodes in a different way when we push it up to Fractal. And so if we go back into Fractal, and I'll skip over to the next workspace, now we see that those watch nodes are given as orange axes. And so in this way, you can just have output that's not like being calculated and it's not generating anything, but it's just like a visualization of like some certain extrinsic property of the geometry that you're generating. So that's pretty cool. And whatever you name the watch nodes is the title of the axes. And that's kind of like a paradigm that perpetuates itself through a lot of these sending to web technologies as they're built on top of Dynamo. Any questions about that?
It'd be good too to show them Dynamo Studio if we can get them in Fractal. They could at least use Dynamo Studio, right? So it'd be good to show that if they want to
Sure.
interact with it.
And so, yeah, you guys could go ahead and send this to web as well if you're interested, right?
I
And
was going to say, if you guys want to, like with Dynamo Studio, if Mark looks at that, the other thing with Dynamo Studio that's pretty cool that we've used it for is that you can build out, say, a dynamic or parametric script and then send that to, say, a client or someone else, like a PM, and then they can go through and just edit the sliders. They don't have to worry about, like, the spaghetti mess of, like, the scripting, and they just see the sliders. So when you guys send to web, check it out in the customizer, and you can see some of that as well.
question? Yes. Yeah, I think John is like, stoked to answer this. So like,
I'm like, whoa, no.
Yeah, if you want to
So
answer.
Dynamo Studio, so Send to Web started out in Dynamo 0.8. So back then it was in Revit. They put it in Dynamo Studio, and now Dynamo Studio is part of the subscription licensing thing. So that's kind of how you get it now. It is just in Dynamo Studio. Custom nodes are allegedly coming eventually to Dynamo Studio for Send to Web. Yeah, I think that's a fair one. Yeah. Yeah, so if you have a bunch bundled together, kind of how we did this morning, so like if you bundle like all of that level stuff that Mark's doing into a custom node, it'll work because it's made of out-of-the-box nodes, but stuff like Revit libraries will definitely work because you're not in Revit, and C# and things like that because yeah, so there's a lot of stuff like that. It's always changing. Dynamo Studio and Fractal like get me super excited because they're always adding stuff to it, for sure.
Is she just talking to you, or?
No, so numbers. So adding numbers. So like, there's a whole list of all the inputs you can use. So you can use number, string, instead of a code block. So just don't use a code block if you want someone to put in strings or numbers.
But you can change a number slider on the web, but you can't add a string on the web or add a number on the web. You can basically add it and put just like a slider on the web.
Okay. So we had a question back here? Sorry, what was that? Oh, I think, yeah. Yeah, so essentially the essence is asking, like, is it secure if you publish something to the web? And no, it's not. It's kind of like, they can't like manipulate it and make it do different things, but anybody that has the address can navigate to that without needing like credentials. Yeah, definitely. Okay.
How hard is it to get, because it's all open source, you said only stock packages
I think this is a good question for Zach again.
So, part of what's going on right now is there's a lot going on with respect to public.
Oh, sure. I'm an editor for sure. Yeah. Oh.
So we are basically doing a rebuild on it.
I think she like got a little off topic, so I was just kind of like, yeah, let's just.
Because when people start like saying, in my experience, it's we're in trouble.
Yeah.
And they turn to the side, like, that's when you're like, oh, or if it's stand up, you're like, oh shit.
Yeah, definitely.
You gotta like ring them in.
Do like scratch your neck. I think I have one last one. Did you sign out of my fractal?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I wanted to answer her question about the text.
It didn't matter, dude.
So, for instance, you guys used some functionality today, probably that was submitted by third-party developers. That is somebody who isn't Autodesk or isn't on Dynamo team. The process is basically you issue what's called pull request.
Who's Zach Cron? What's like his title?
He's a project manager for Dynamo.
Yeah,
Product manager.
Product manager.
Like senior product manager. He started out on this. He got hired to like model dragons and shit. See if he wrote the software. I was like, damn. That's a job.
So it's fairly recent, like the last 6 months, 9 months, where we've got those sorts of submissions. Over the course of the lifetime of Dynamo, we've gotten a lot more bug reports and sort of suggested fixes where people open up and look at the code and they say, this line is where the bug is coming from, and then we fix it. But now we're actually getting to the point where we're actually getting not just new node submissions, but also bug fixes that are coming from the community, which is awesome.
Should have paid more attention to that dinosaur jumping thing, dude. I could have gone for so long.
I like that game. I've done that in presentations when it dies too. Because it's just such a good icebreaker. Like, brings attention. So,
Thank you, Zach.
Yeah,
Just a second. Does anyone else have any more questions for Zach? He's like a senior product manager of Dynamo. So, Zach, you know,
no,
if you want an expert to answer your question, like now's like an ask me anything, right? So.
he's like, thanks, guys. So,
And you got to corner him.
so one question that came up on the customizer bit is, can you use numbers and strings, not just sliders? You most certainly can. This is a customizer where you type in a word, so like hashtag AU 2017. I'll hit it somewhere else. It generates that text for me in the viewport, and it also supports numbers because I can change the RGB values of that thing. It's slightly dark green, but you can use strings and numbers as inputs. That's kind of the take home. I'll like tweak this graph, and you can actually save the Dynamo graph by clicking download. That way you can see how it's done too. So that's kind of fun. I wanted to answer that question because it was kind of one that came up.
And there's also a lot of hacks where you can bring in like images, kind of. And you could also do things where you can just like hack like lots of interesting things with this. You can import like SAT files if like you want to do something interesting with geometry that you would otherwise not want to like model out completely in Dynamo. Cool. So I'm going to log back in real quick, and then I'll just show like the last kind of appended workflow there to the fractal bit. You do the same thing. same thing. Okay, well, let's see here. Cool. So last thing that we did here was we kind of just rotated everything on the site. Typically, like, this is a point where you kind of tiptoe between like crazy twisty buildings and things like that, and you know that stuff usually doesn't like jazz people up that much because it's not like real life architecture. But one thing that we have seen from clients is to start to develop different building footprints given like a certain like minimal site. And this is definitely like one spot where like the industry is going at this point. And so here's like a simple way, like you could just use some geometry rotation nodes, and you can start to like rotate the building around and starting to figure out like which ways would be like most optimal as you kind of look at a building in its context. So if we can come in here and then we can start to just like rotate the building around. And you can also rotate like the levels and stuff kind of in a separate way. And so that same thing is up here. And you know, like always, you just add like this as an is input, and you're ready to rock and roll to like send this up. And now you got some rotation on the site, and you can kind of start to see which kind of like visually distinctive geometry has which attributes, kind of in an intrinsic way. So. This has been just like a, you know, a brief overview about Fractal and Dynamo Studio and the kind of connection between the two. You know, don't forget Dynamo Customizer is pretty good and flexible for sharing with clients and different owners that want to see their building filled out in different ways. So I think, you know, to kind of end things off, I think John has one more example that he wants to show. That I think he wasn't able to do this morning because we had so much technical difficulty. So I'll pass it off to John, and we'll kind of wrap things up here for Evolve Labs part.
Thanks, man. Everyone for Mark. That Fractal is amazing, and like building that stuff's not easy. All right, so everyone closed Revit, I imagine, huh? One thing that we didn't get to this morning was merging these dang dimensions. That was kind of where it all started to deflate, right? So more Dynamo Player, what we're going to do is we're going to open the end product and probably talk through it, or do show of hands, does anyone want to get in the trenches and build this from scratch? All right, a couple. We'll just talk through it, because I do want to introduce a package that's super awesome called Data Shapes, because who's in Revit 2016 still? No, man. 2015. No, I'm just kidding. So we have quite a few clients in 2016 ourselves. 2016 doesn't have Dynamo Player, but you're able to do some pretty cool stuff. 2017, you can use these workflows. So in the sample model, let's go ahead and fire up Dynamo. And you could just follow along at this point too. I know it's a long workshop. I've been there to where you're dying by now. It's so much. And great news is they recorded this year, and we have our data sets. That's amazing. So that's the first year I've seen that. So round of applause for all the tech team, too. All right, so what we'll do is we'll navigate to data set. On your computer, you'll click on data sets on your desktop. On mine, I go to OneDrive. Dynamo BIM Workshop, data set. Dynamo Player, which was the first one, and we'll do 01.2-end _ end. And I'll talk through this, and then we'll run it through Dynamo Player. So Data Shapes is a package that you can download from the package manager, and then it shows up under a bin called Data Shapes. If we expand the UI portion, which is right there, we have all these cool things. So what this means right here is it's a custom node. Mostafa El-Ayoubi built all these workflows for us with Python. So Python's a programming language that you can use in Dynamo. He built all this stuff that stacks together and weaves like this, and you can build really neat things. He has a lot of time on his hands, I think, because, man, that was a lot of workflows. So the way that Data Shapes works is it has these little data nodes. So see this one, UI text note data? This is kind of something to put a heading, like on an add-in. So any add-in has a UI to make it really easy for the users to see. We're able to add images to it. We'll see what that does in a second when I hit run. And then we're able to embed Revit logic as well. So UI.selectModelElementsData provides a data output for selecting model elements. In this example, we're merging dimensions, so you can also tell Dynamo, only let me select dimensions, because I don't want to select like a curtain wall and try to merge dimension. Doesn't work. So once you get all of your inputs, you combine them with the list create node, which we used pretty heavily earlier in that list management exercise. So we got to merge all these things. This is the equivalent like in Grasshopper to where you just keep putting inputs in. So list create does that for us. From here, he has this node called UI multi-input form plus plus. This takes inputs that are data inputs from his package, so these ones in this list create, and you put them right in there. And then you tell people what it's doing. So in this case, I have the AU logo that shows up, so I'm branding my little Revit add-in, essentially. I'm telling them, merge them. That's what the approve button is. We're telling it to run, and then the cancel button's never mind. I like to name them very, very practical. You're also able to define like widths and things, but we'll leave that alone. So and I'll just run it from here. I won't run it from Dynamo Player right now. But in data shapes, if I hit run, it's going to think for a second. But that's the face I get when I see all those frickin' dimensions singular. I mean, like, what were they thinking? Like, it drives me nuts. So we can embed this kind of stuff in there and just kind of have fun with it, too. This tells me if people ran it, too, because they're like, John, you put that cat in there again? And I'm like, yeah. So you use the workflow. Oh, cool. And then we have a select single dimensions input. So what we need to do is in Revit, so I'll minimize Dynamo, move over, select single dimensions. We'll go left to right, just get the ones that we want to merge, hit finish in the toolbar, and now we have those selected. So if I do merge them, what's going to happen? Does anyone know? It's going to merge all of the dimensions for me. Yay, they're fixed. I did something that someone screwed up and I need to get someone in trouble too. No, I'm just kidding. It also sends an email to your boss with the user ID of the user who made that. You could do that. Yes, that was actually a Python example I had this morning that we didn't get to. But there's nodes in out-of-the-box Dynamo to do prefix, suffix for dimensions. So if you have like a bunch of like VIF, you could put that on your whole model. Does anyone know what VIF means? Verify in field? Put that everywhere. That way you're kind of like protected, right? So now once we hit awesome, and I hover, what is that? One dimension. So now I built another reusable, and you guys get to take this data set home and give it to whoever you want. But I built another, basically a Revit add-in using some Dynamo logic. So let's look at that logic a little bit too. Yeah. It's creating a new dimension with a default type. So if you wanted to set a specific one, you can do that, kind of like we did the curtain panels. So you could do that downstream. The way that data shapes is working is it's providing the elements as output for us. So if I hover, I can see dimensions are selected, and then I get my dimensions at 0 because it indents it for me, because I can have several inputs. And then there's no node in Dynamo right now to get the referencing elements of a dimension, so I made one in Rhythm to use. A lot of times I'll run into something, I'm like, man, someone else has to have a bad user in their office too. Somebody, right? So I make these nodes for that. From here, we're just rebuilding, and I'll hit escape to look at the background preview. If you hold down escape and right click, you can pan and zoom. I'm rebuilding the line that the dimension gets created by. That line's right here in this gray portion. These graphs are heavily annotated too for you. This is an out-of-the-box node that was introduced, I think, in 1.0. Create dimensions with Dynamo. Pretty cool stuff. So now all I need to do is tell it what elements to dimension, what line to follow, and what view to do it in. These are the nodes I talked about earlier to get the active view without Spring nodes. Just use Spring nodes, though. From there, I tell it to wait. And then I tell it to go ahead and delete the old dimensions. So I'm actually getting rid of them. There's not an out-of-the-box delete node, just because I think that's such a scary word, delete. So there is a node in Spring Nodes that lets you do that. Question? Oh, so that pass-through node, is it still on the screen? Cool. So the way pass-through works is that's from Clockwork. And what it does is it waits till this is fulfilled. So once something finishes, and then it pushes something through. In my case, those are my old dimensions. So it's saying, wait till something else is done, and then let this stuff go through. So pass-through is really good for sequencing stuff. Like I said, Clockwork, download it, use it. Awesome. Yeah. Oh, it's huge. No, I'm just kidding. So the pass-through is the biggest node you'll ever see if you double-click on it. No, I'm just kidding. All pass-through is like, it's just telling you what to wait. It's a code block, kind of like we made this morning. It's really clever. Those guys, they're smart dudes. Once I found that, I was like, oh my! I was on like forums looking up all this crazy stuff to like sleep the thread. If you're a coder, you know what that means. And I got down a rabbit hole. From there, with data shapes, we can build feedback nodes as well that rely on other data. So that's when we saw the minions chair. So that's what's happening at the end. Data shapes is really cool because in Revit 2017 that doesn't have the Dynamo player with inputs. You can build these workflows that pop up and distribute them. I really like using data shapes and Dynamo player because like every Revit user should be a Dynamo user, but we have those Revit users that I wouldn't want to throw in Dynamo. So I'll just give them Dynamo player graphs. So that's kind of what we had. I'm very excited that we got to go through that example, especially after this morning, so apologies on that. But that's what we had. Dynamo player is awesome. Question? I haven't tried that. I'd have to try it. I think it would work, though. Yeah. If you have one dimension with three things, another dimension, I'd have to try it. I did it with Singular just because it was like the biggest example of terrible drafting technique. Question?
You knew that those ones were individual. You selected one as an example.
Yes.
How am I going to deal with the entire floor plan and possibly it's happening in several places?
Yeah, so the question was, I kind of built that error in on purpose. So I knew that was the ones to select. What we can do is we can, the question was, can we build in logic to automatically detect bad drafting habits? And the short answer is yes. But just thinking it out real quick in my head, I can analyze if the dimensions are on the same plane or line and see how close they are, like do a proximity. And then if they're in the Revit API, there's an option to figure out if something's multi-segmented. So I can say, filter by bool mask, get rid of all my multi-segmented, and let's look at the single segment dimensions, and then you can start to group them. Because in addition to filter by Boolean mask, you can group by key, which I didn't even show, and that's number 2 favorite for me. Dang. So yeah, that's kind of that workflow. Not the best answer, but it's possible. It's like if you think it, you can do it. What was the question?
Just a thought that I had now, question that I get from a lot of my clients is, why can't you just draw a line and make it dimensions? Do you think we could do it with Dynamo?
So like,
Draw the line to the...
It hurts me. What I'm going to say is, I hope I'm wrong. Can you dimension a line that you draw?
No.
Oh.
Draw a line.
I was like, can you dimension a detail line? I was like, no. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, you could probably build that logic for sure to where you draw a line and get intersecting things and dimension them. I bet you could, because Colin McCrone had a really good example at Built where he renumbered rooms with a spline. It'd be the same logic. So that's a good one. If like you start exploring it and you get hung up, email me for sure. That's another thing that I want to kind of get to is if you guys leave this and start making really cool stuff, tag us on Twitter and all that stuff because like I want to see what you guys are doing too. That way we know we at least did a little bit of our job, right? And you learned something. So I think that's all we had. It's a little bit early, but that's fine. It'll give you guys time to hang out, use the restroom, get coffee. And then there's a forum after this where people are sharing similar things like Long and Rick shared based on their actual experiences in using Dynamo in practice. I'm looking forward to it, and then we all kind of get to relax and watch them as well. I think there are surveys going going on the app. So if you guys can do a survey for us, that'd be amazing. You have a chance to win an AU pass for next year, which is cool. Already book your attendance. That'd be cool. That way you kind of know you're already going to be here in this awesome place again. So thank you guys so much.